So, Mr. Stahl, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to the students today. Of course, our students, we have a lot of HR students, but we also have some management students and some undecided students. And so they would really like to hear maybe your journey into human resources, how you got into it, any particular experiences with staffing that you want to share, and then maybe we'll start talking about the forecasting and planning, because I know you have tons of experience in that area. So kind of just introduce yourself and then tell us about your journey.
Sure. Well, I graduated from my undergrad 10 years ago, which seems like a long time, but also not a really long time. And I initially went to college to be a history teacher, and that lasted about one semester. And then I switched to the business college. And I remember looking at all the different majors, and my alma mater, Ball State University in Indiana, had a human resources management major within the business college. It wasn't a minor, it wasn't something, it was actually a major. And I went to kind of an exploratory day where you could listen to the department chair and some of the professors talk about it. And I remember at the time I thought, okay, rules, policies, procedures, dealing with people, like I'm kind of a rule follower, and I like to help people as well. And I thought, this might be something I could look at, and interested me more than finance or supply chain and those sort of things. So I ended up really loving it. Joined the SHRM chapter, did a professional business fraternity, did some other things, and really enjoyed it. And then of course you learn a lot more about HR, that it's not just helping people. It's there's so many disciplines within HR that every day is a little bit different, which is what I really enjoy about it. And then when it came to searching for a job, I still actually have a file on my computer that I've kept for the last 10 or 11 years. It outlined every single job I applied for in my last semester of undergrad. And I think the list exceeds like 80 jobs or something. And I only received a call back from maybe 4 of them, 4 out of 80. And I received offers from 2 of them. So anytime I'm talking to students that are like in their search for a job, I kind of tell them, you need to apply at a really heavy clip, because the amount of people that may respond to you, it could be fairly low, looking for entry level sometimes. But I think the market's changing a lot more, where now there are a lot of companies like Amazon that are hiring a ton of entry level people and then taking them through the ranks pretty fast.
Yeah, so how long did it take you because that's a great question. It always comes up. How long do I plan for that job search? How long did it take you back then?
I started to apply for jobs in the fall, and then I figured that was way too early, and who's going to hire me for the following June or July? It was just too early. So I think around February, so just a few months before I graduated, I got pretty serious about it, and I started applying really heavily and just looking for phone calls back. And so, give it a couple of months, because you want to hit that sweet spot where if a company is looking to hire now, they're not, they're going to be maybe in a position to say, okay, they're going to graduate in 2 months. That's okay. We can start the process. It'll take a little bit of time. Then we can wait a few weeks or a month for them to start. So that I think the timing's got to be 2 or 3 months probably.
Okay. Yeah, we usually recommend, or at least I do, that students try to take online classes their last semester. So if they end up with that perfect job offer, but you have to be there and present, you can't be going to classes during the day. You can take that job. But I know some of our students have constraints and can't do that.
Yeah, I agree. If you can do it, that's great. If not, just you have to think about it like you're in the employer seat, and like would you hire yourself if you had to wait 6 months for that person? It's a little bit tricky.
So you, with your career, you started out in an entry level. Where did you go from there?
Yeah, I ended up working in a corporate environment first for a tier 1 automotive supplier. So a car component supplier to Ford, GM, Chrysler, all the big car companies. And I was very lucky, because I got in an entry level HR job, and within months I was supporting labor negotiations, benefit rollouts, I was getting out into our manufacturing plants a lot. So I was getting into the operations of our business pretty quickly. And then after only about 8 months, there was an opportunity in one of our facilities, and I ended up taking that role. And I was there for about 2 years or so as a plant HR generalist. So I got into a smaller plant with a small HR team. It was just myself and my HR manager. It was a union site. So I learned very quickly about labor and operations and kind of working in a very small team. Then I moved to another plant as a generalist, but this plant was 3 times bigger, non-union, a much larger HR team. And I was there for about a year. And then I got promoted to an HR manager, and I was going back and forth to South Carolina every week because we had a plant that was closing, and the HR manager there left. And so I was promoted to go travel for about 6 months or so to close this plant. And I was 25 years old, doing something I'd never done before. I don't know why they wanted me to do it. Maybe because I was in a position where I was able to travel and do it. So I did that for about 6 months. And then I came back to the plant I left, and I was the HR manager there for about a year. And then I left that company, moved again, and went to another automotive company, same size, and went to another manufacturing plant. And I was the plant HR manager there for about 2.5 years. And then I moved back to Michigan, and I've been here for about 3 years. And I've been in tons of different roles supporting operations, labor negotiations, total rewards from the compensation side, and running developmental programs. I mean, I feel like I do just about everything right now. But so all in all, my wife and I moved about 5 times in about 7 years, and then now we're sort of stable where we are. So I've kind of been everywhere.
That's more frequent than the military.
Yeah.
Every 3 to 5 years.
we have some moving boxes with like 4 different color stickers on them that just keep moving with us constantly.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I looked at some of the things that you've done, you said that you had done forecasting and analysis in your business group across the global team. And this included helping your leaders understand headcounts, coaching the HR teams on how to forecast properly, how to partner with finance teams to ensure headcounts align with financial forecasting. Can you talk about this? I mean, this is really fascinating, and it really syncs with some of the things our students are learning. Just, why did you do it? How did you do it? Some of the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, so our business group is about $3 billion in revenue across our entire company. We have about 18 or 20,000 employees, and just my business group, we're just one of 4. And we have, trying to think, maybe 30 or 40, 50. We have dozens of manufacturing sites around the world, and some have 200 people, some have 1,200 people. And every year when we go through our budgeting process, finance does their budgeting for, sales and revenue and costs and everything else. And what my boss and I figured out was that we weren't really doing our part, in our business. And she was relatively new to the company, and she came in and said, where's our forecasting? Where's finance getting the information they need to cost, what we're doing in our plants, cost our pieces per head, where's that coming from? And we found out that, finance, in some regions they were partnering with HR, and others they were just kind of figuring it out on their own. They would look at historical headcount. And so we said we need to put a robust process in place where our HR teams, and that's every plant HR manager, or if they're in charge of a technical center or regional headquarters, they need to have a yearly budget. So about this time of the year, they should be budgeting our 2022 headcount month over month. And that's all of our salaried employees, our hourly employees, direct and indirect headcount, any temps or contractors that we have, and they need to budget that out over every single month in the year. And then that's kind of like our static budget that doesn't change. And then we have sort of our variable forecast. So, things happen, right? A pandemic happened last year, and our headcount forecast had to swing pretty wildly. We also might have, an increase in business that was unaccounted for, shutdowns like the chip shortage we're dealing with, where we have more people that are they're they're out on either, like a forced vacation, or they're out on layoff, and we have to adjust those headcounts. So what we expect from our plants is that, if they're showing in January, they're going to have 100 salary people, 200 hourly people, and 5 temps. Well, I mean, it's not going to remain that all year long. They might have fluctuations with, in Europe, they have month-long shutdowns. They might have additional work that was unanticipated, where they might have to bring in 100 more temps to help with the labor. And in other cases, right now, we're having a really hard time getting people to apply and come to work and stay at work. And so even though they might have forecasted a full headcount, let's say their full headcount should be 400 people, month over month, they might be at 325 or 350. And we need to know that. We need to know that, your budget is 400, but your actual is, 325 or 350. And that's important because it goes into our costing for our pieces. In fact, just this morning, I got an email from some of the people that run our program management. So they deal with Ford and General Motors and Chrysler. And Ford wants to know what they want to know what our average hourly rate is. They want to know what the price of our benefits package is. They want to know how much vacation, like they want to know nearly everything about our comp package. And then Ford, along with us, we use that to help us cost out, what a potential program could be. So Ford wants to put a program into one of our facilities. Both sides need to cost out approximately, what that's going to look like. And then it helps us appropriately quote work. So when you talk about future business, we can't go in blind. We can't go in, quoting, okay, we'll do, $10 a brake pad. Well, if our labor cost is $11 per brake pad, we would never quote that. Or if we want to quote it, if it costs, if labor cost is $11 and other variable costs are $5, then we might want to quote for, I don't know, $20 or $25 per brake pad. And then they're going to have to determine, if they want to do business with us, if that's our cost of doing business. So when we talk about connecting it to finance, I honestly don't even know how a lot of our plants even were doing this before. I don't even know how they could appropriately, cost out what the labor would be and put that into our per piece cost and appropriately quote work, or really understand, are we making money? Are we fluctuating, higher, lower? There's one metric that a lot of our plants use is pieces per head, right? So if we're making, 100 pieces per head, maybe you set a target that you make 120 pieces a head, and you can make more with either fewer heads, or you become more efficient in some way. But every business, like in manufacturing, everyone's going to have some kind of quote. Even Amazon will probably have a quote for how many pieces get, picked and shipped per head in their facilities. So that's why forecasting for us is really important, because it just really helps us understand our business in general. Again, our labor costs, our piece cost, and then how we can quote to Ford or GM future business.
Now, have you done any forecasting in a different industry where you could compare how it might be the same or different?
My entire career has been in automotive, so
Okay.
I can't say.
All right, that's fair enough. It's I think that when you talk about HR and you talk about careers in HR,
Mhm.
it's often hard to start in one industry, move up, and then try and transition to another industry, simply because some of the skill sets are so unique to that industry. Looking
Yeah.
at healthcare, there's a huge focus on biohazards, OSHA training from within. And you're talking about counts and piecemeal and head count. It's it makes you think that when you start talking about the cost of wages and to train individuals, that there has to be a limited number of positions where training is cost effective at such a low rate for a product.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this as well. I mean, I at a certain point, when you look at maybe a $10 brake pad, you might say, okay, how much do we want to invest? This is unskilled labor. How much do we really want to put into this? It's interesting because in automotive, do you remember the Takata airbag incident where airbags were out deploying? Then Takata, the company, they got in trouble. You see recalls all the time. You see warranty costs for companies going way up, and the OEMs, Ford and GM, they always come back to the supplier if a product fails or needs to be recalled, or if they get warranty costs. It always goes back on the supplier. So we actually go through some pretty rigorous certifications with our customers, and part of that is actually ensuring that everybody is trained properly on the parts. So we actually do quite a lot of training. We actually spend a lot of hours on training to make sure that everyone is making the products exactly to spec. And if not, we could actually lose these certifications, which would make it really difficult for us to even do business with these guys. So we take it pretty seriously, but a lot of times when we get so far behind, or like right now when we're lacking people, it's really difficult to get that time to train people at our facilities.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, when you look at, what you've talked about with headcount and finance and projections and product, what about recruiting? Can you remember that the students have no experience with HR. Can you talk a little bit about how forecasting is impacting the recruiting of talent, either internally or externally? We talked a little bit about training, which impacts the internal talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you just talk about that, the relationship there?
Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, right now, a lot of businesses actually, you may hear have, freezes in the fourth quarter, when they're trying to save money at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. My company, a lot of automotives are not immune to that at all. When you get to the end of the year, you typically see positions being cut back as we try to make our numbers for the end of the year. So right now at my company, there are a lot of discussions right now about evaluating every open position that we have, even up to our CHRO. He's looking at every single HR position that is outside of the plant. So those might be, corporate or regional jobs. And even he's looking at all of them and saying, okay, how many, which one of these are necessary? Which one of these should be filled now? What should be frozen for now? And then maybe we open it up for recruiting later, or what do we cut entirely? So especially in, right now, a lot of our high cost countries. So high cost countries might be the US, Belgium, Germany, a lot of Western European countries. Recruitment has gotten actually a lot more scrutinized in a lot of our high cost countries when we have other emerging countries coming out, maybe in Eastern Europe or, Latin America, South America, where we can get really, really great talent. But the cost to employ, or the cost of labor is much lower. So from a recruiting standpoint, we've seen a lot of our positions to support our company either shift through time, or they've shifted to different regions in our company. And a lot of it, again, it goes back to cost and where it can be done. But when it comes to our plant positions, where people have to be physically located at the site supporting the plant, typically we don't see those really impacted as much as the support positions. I'm not sure if that helped answer your question.
Yeah, it did. I mean, some of what I'm seeing is instead of a freeze, maybe a delay. So if a position comes open and there's a standard delay in hiring, they may open it, but they're not intending to hire it for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months in order to save the cost on that position. So the duties get absorbed by the positions surrounding it for a short period of time, or they bring in temporary help at a reduced cost.
Yeah, right now I'm actually trying to recruit a position to support me on my team. And And honestly, I'm afraid that it might get frozen or delayed, because in the meantime, I'm doing all parts of my job with no support, no one to kind of, hand things off to. And so right now, the position supporting me is undergoing that scrutiny I was talking about. And either I may fill it, from one of those low cost countries internally, or it may be asked to be delayed until the fourth quarter. So right now, actually, because of the big chip shortage, we've reduced a lot of our volumes and a lot of our operations around the world. So our budgeted revenue is looking a little bit short than what we were anticipating. And so we're looking at, okay, what are all the things we can do from an HR standpoint to really try to significantly impact that little bit of a shortage? And of course, recruitment always gets hit,
And how do you reach out
saving.
to your partners, so your supervisors or your business unit managers, and discuss this upcoming shortage with them? How do you bridge that?
We have really good leaders in our company that they have regular staff meetings, regular meetings with their people that go out. If it starts at the top, they might go to their regional leaders then get down to our plant managers and our HR managers and the people that are really supporting our operations. And so it's kind of a top-down communication strategy. But a lot of these things, that's where they start. This is the decisions, or the decision-making process will start at the top, and then it'll flow down. And I had to collect a list of all of our open positions from our talent acquisition group. And, as a team, we had to go through the list and say, okay, again, what can be delayed? What do we think is going to be difficult to recruit anyway, and we're anticipating a Q4 hire? And how many of these can we absolutely not wait on? And we bucketed those into different categories, took them up to our leaders, and they made the ultimate decision, based on our input.
So when talking, to students about potential careers in forecasting and planning, working in HR, what skills do you think are most important, or that they should develop? What should they consider early on, before they get into the career? And maybe as they progress, what should they think about building on?
Anything that has to do with, data analysis. I mean, 10 years ago, I really don't remember a lot of my classes really getting around, numbers and data and really robust analysis. I mean, I've taught myself more in the last few years in Excel than I think I ever really knew before, because I had no choice. And by the way, YouTube is free. I've learned a lot on YouTube, so use it. But when I've taken more, green generalists, on my team, they might be really good at, they could pull a report and then they can, export it into an Excel, and then they give me the Excel, and then, I might look at it. But there are times where, I might ask them, just, when you look at this, what do you see? Just you kind of go through maybe the, I don't know if it's the Socratic method, but, I just keep asking them, question after question after question, and, kind of walk through, okay, we started here, now we're here. What happened in between? What are some significant events that we think happened here? Okay, it was the pandemic. Okay, it was this. Okay, it was that. Maybe that can explain why our headcount went from 18,000 to 15,000 and then back up to 17,000. What are those key points that we can, assign to those big jumps in data? And then, that we can explain, because we actually got questioned just a few months ago about why a few sites in particular had such a huge spike in headcount in recent months. And I had to go back in time. I had to go back using some of the tools we have to look at the headcount trends through time. And that's where I was able to find very easily, they were pretty static for several years. And then in March 2020, took a little bit of a dip. And then by the third quarter, things started to recover a little bit. And so they came up slowly. And now we're busier than ever. And it's not that they added a lot of headcount. They just came back to where they used to be for years. It just took them a little bit of time to get back to those levels that they used to be at. So many jobs that I see in HR today, it's less fluff, if you will. You know, a lot of people might say, you know, I'm good with people, so HR is where I want to go. You can be good with people, you really should be. But if you can't kind of dual hat it with, you know, the people side, but also the data analytics side, you may struggle. And maybe I'm just speaking from like working for a really large company. You know, if you work for a much smaller local regional company, maybe it's a little bit different. I'm not sure. But if you want to work for, you know, a Fortune 500 company, it's pretty much going to be expected that you can look at a data set and you can analyze it and you can look for trends, or you can try to explain, you know, what happened. If you just want to be the person that just gets the report and hands it to somebody else, and you don't want to develop that skill set, your career may be limited.
I mean, I agree. You know, what I see is that if you're in an admin position, you're strictly an HR admin, you may be taking it and handing it off. But if you want to move up, you definitely have to be able to field these questions from other managers and supervisors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the big jumps in data that you were talking about, and forecasting, you know, labor, say next year, the next year, you know, what's your time horizon? Is it fairly large, or are you looking at a shorter time horizon?
Typically, we're only seriously looking at the next calendar year. But there have been times when I've been asked to forecast like 4 years out. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, I didn't see the point in it. And this was pre-COVID too, by the way. This happened in 2019. I think in 2019, I was asked to forecast my group through 2023 or 2024. And I put in what I thought was a realistic forecast for the following calendar year, but then I just copied it for the rest of the 3 or 4 years, because I just, you know, I've got my crystal ball, but I'm not that good. You know, I can't forecast that far in a very serious way. The only way that would really make a lot of sense is if maybe you were in a manufacturing plant and you knew that you were going to take on new products or new programs in 2023 and 2025, and you kind of knew when those intervals were going to come. And if you were really ingrained in your business at a manufacturing plant, hopefully you would understand, you know, okay, when we take on program X, do we anticipate using our current labor pool? You know, are we going to lose a program and then gain this program and we just shift those people over and our numbers remain static? Or are we going to expand? Are we going to add on to the building? Do we have extra space? We're going to add 2 manufacturing lines and I need to hire 10 people per line per shift, because that can change your forecast, and you can actually put together a semi-serious forecast. But typically we're good enough to look out at least a year.
So your look back period, you know, how far are you looking back to create your probabilities for that year?
Looking back, I'll tell you, finance typically only really cares about prior year, so just 1 year back. Mm-hmm. They do an awful lot of analysis of just actuals today versus prior year. We don't typically get questioned or beat up too much about where we are today versus 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So to be honest, we really don't do a lot of looking back.
Okay, so, and where I was going with this is, so we had this pandemic, we had this huge jump in the data. So how do you handle that looking forward? You know, you've got, you know, a period 1-2 years, you're saying possibly 1 year you're looking back at, you know, your 1 year look back has that big jump in data. How are you going to forecast going forward and have a reasonably accurate forecast? What methods would you use? What would you tell students you would use?
I would say, I mean, the way I used to do it was, I was really close with operations in our plants. And I would not just look back and say, okay, last year we averaged 320 hourly people month over month, and so I'm just going to throw that on a forecast and throw it out. I would actually have meetings and conversations and sit down with them and say, like I said earlier, what kind of programs we anticipate coming in, what programs do we expect to exit. And if you're going to tell me that we're going to add 100 more people in the next 12 months, I need to know that, because I need to start recruiting probably now and start building that up, because I can't recruit 100 people the month before a program starts. It's a slow build up. As we bring people in, we train them, they can fill absentees and gaps in the meantime, but it's going to take some time to kind of build that glide slope. So I really base mine off of a kind of like a realistic forecast of what we actually needed. We call it RTR, or required to run. So I would say, what's our RTR? How many people, how many, butts in the seat do we need in this plant to run every line and every program that we have? What's that number? And then maybe you have an extra 5% built in for absenteeism and vacation coverage. But my goal was knowing month over month, what is our RTR? Because then I can take those numbers from my operations partners, and then I know like what recruiting milestones myself and my team have to hit to make sure that we support the plant.
So have you ever been in a situation where you've had short notice and had to ramp up for a program?
Yeah, all the time. we would win a program with Ford, and these Ford guys, they would practically live in our plant. And by the way, if you ever want to get into automotive, get used to these guys from Ford, GM, Chrysler, Honda, whoever. They will almost put their sign in front of your sign out front, and they will run your business. You think about the new Ford Bronco that just came out. Do you think that they would have suffered any level of incompetence to getting every single screw and part and brake pad they needed to make those cars and get them out? I don't think so. So if you are a risk to them, if you're a risky supplier, if they're not sure about your competency or your capability to pull off a program launch and getting the line set up and getting them tuned exactly the way they need them, or getting the people into supply to make sure you can make those parts effectively and proficiently. I mean, it can be pretty intense. And so sometimes we've had, maybe 4 to 6 months over our head between, we know that we won a program, and then our company assigned it to our facility because we had the footprints and the capacity to add it into our plants. And then all of a sudden the Ford guys show up the next day and they're in my office asking me for my hiring plan. And I'm like, I didn't even know we won a program, and they're in my office asking what my hiring plan is. So it can, these things can happen pretty quickly. But if you kind of have a cadence or a process in your mind, like in my world, it's like, okay, you want a program, you have to know what the requirements are, what the people requirements are. Then you can think about, what is our average time to fill? What's our retention rate? I mean, you can put together a plan, but at that level, you kind of have to know what your lead time is going to be to fill those roles, and have a plan ready for your team. Maybe you have a goal, like every week you need to hire 8 new operators, or every month it needs to be 20 new operators. And that's net too. That takes into account attrition as well. So we might, if we hire 20 people, but we lose 10, then we didn't meet our goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Okay, so any final thoughts for students to wrap this up?
I think before you mentioned people who might be, HR admins, and they're just producing the information, but moving it up. I think that for your students, they should think about, this kind of like a dual career path, right? I work with generalists who have been generalists for 20, 30 plus years, their whole career. And then other people that go the leadership management route, and they climb the ranks really, really quickly. I think that each person should go into their career thinking about which path they want to take. Do they want to be the expert specialist, or do they want to go the leadership route? I think if you want to do the expert technical specialist route, that's perfectly fine. I would just say, do everything you possibly can to maximize your skill set and become, maybe the one person who really knows how to do everything. Because you can have a pretty good career if you are really that specialized and you can do those sort of things. But if you want to take the leadership route, like for me, I moved and relocated tons of time. I was super flexible. And I gained a lot of really great and crazy and weird experiences along the way that helped me, get up to a director level position pretty quickly. But one thing I'm seeing a lot right now is, remote work is taking over. And I think flexibility, if you want to go that leadership management route, just prepare to be really flexible. Be willing to get out of your comfort zone. A lot of people that I work with, they're not really willing sometimes to get out of their comfort zone. They just kind of want to stay in their box and do what they want to do. And then 10 years later, they're still doing that same thing. They've never really branched out too much. Amazon is a really good example. If you've ever been on LinkedIn, if you see people talk about their Amazon career, it's like every year, sometimes they're moving from Seattle to Texas to Connecticut to Indiana, and they're moving every year. And these guys are going up the chain within 5 or 8 years. They're a leader in Amazon, but that's what's expected of them. So I would just say that everyone kind of needs to take sort of like a personal inventory of, which path you want to take, and then whichever one it is, just commit to it. Because if you want to be a leader and you want to go that fast track, you want to be, a VP of HR at some company, you've got to think about maybe what the people who are current VPs in your company, what are their backgrounds? What did they do? Did they move around a lot? Did they get certain certifications? Did they get a master's degree? And try to emulate what those people did. Because if you kind of stay static in your comfort zone, you may unintentionally go the other path. So that's kind of what I learned from a lot of people I worked with, is they've done so many things in their career, and they're not necessarily like really super experts in one particular thing, but they're really good at 20 different things. Like they're really good in a lot of, pretty much every discipline in HR. And so then they can kind of climb those leadership ranks because they can have a very competent conversation with, anybody in the entire company. They're very versatile people.
So students, would you recommend a minor for them? A particular minor that you think would be more beneficial?
Looking back, my minor's in marketing, which I just never really used. This is scary for a lot of HR people, myself included, but I would consider maybe a minor in finance. If you want to go the leadership management rank, you have to have some sort of, financial acumen. And really, I did the one class I was required in undergrad, and I survived it. And then when I did my MBA, I was much more serious about it. And it was really interesting because when I did my MBA, I was 6 years into my career, and like everything in that class made sense to me because I had the work experience. And then all of a sudden it clicked. It clicked with me more than it did in my undergrad. So it's a little scary, but I would recommend finance.
Okay, that's good. That's usually what I recommend. I recommend marketing for people who want to be HR generalist level, benefits, recruiting, people who want to get into leadership and management. I usually recommend finance because you have to talk across the organization.
Yep. And does your university offer any benefit courses like risk management, benefits, comp?
We have compensation and benefits.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish I had enrolled in the benefits class that they offer, because I came into my career knowing absolutely nothing about benefits. So I had to learn that along the way.
I actually don't teach that class. My partner does, and I think it focuses on compensation design. He has a comp design background, so not just admin, but design.
Okay.
Really cool. So I know we have some alumni that work in benefits, though. Maybe we'll pull them in for some discussions. So.
even just, the younger people coming in understanding, like, I didn't know what a deductible was. I didn't know what any of that was. I
Okay,
had to
good
learn.
point.
I had to learn it. I had no clue. So I would recommend getting familiar with that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much for talking to the students. And I'd like to put a summary for the students to just get a brief summary of who you are. If you
Mhm.
can provide that, that would be great. Let me
Sure.
pause the recording real quick.